All right, well, hello and welcome on the Kodiak Broncos Podcast. And today it's kind of been a crazy football day. So on Broncos Twitter, there was a huge discussion about Nick Bonitto, Zack Allen, and Courtland Sutton because they are all in contract years, and it's been a huge talking point of this offseason, even before the draft. But before we get into it, I just want to say a couple things. First of all, leave a like if you enjoy, subscribe if you're not already. You can always wait till the end. Hopefully, I've earned it. And yeah, let's dive right into it. So the Broncos did not have any offseason talks with these guys, and they wanted to wait until after the draft, mainly because you never know who's going to be available. You never know, how the draft is going to shake things up, and you never want to pigeonhole yourself into one specific strategy in the draft as well. But going into 2026, the Broncos currently have $70 million in projected cap space, and that's even before potential cuts like Powers. Maybe the Broncos like what they have with Palcho and Crum, and maybe they want to move on from a guy like McGlinchey. I don't know. That's just a hypothetical. But you never know. It's the NFL. Situations change pretty quickly. So there could be guys who are, making a lot of money right now who could be cut. But as of right now, with no moves being made, we currently have $70 million in 2026 cap space. We can obviously restructure. We can obviously, do whatever we need to create cap space. But yeah. And listen, for this, I'm just going to assume that John Franklin Myers is not going to be on this team next year. It wouldn't surprise me if they also extended him, but I just don't think there's any room for him, to be completely honest. All right, so talking about all three of these guys, I'm going to start with Nick Bonitto. And I was going to save this till the very end of this slide, but I think this is the one guy who you really, really can't play around with. I think it is just so hard to find quality edge play, quality young edge play. One from a guy who was a second-team All-Pro. Talent like that just does not grow on trees, especially within an organization. And I know that we're 5 deep at edge now. I know that I trust Jonah Ellis and, Dondre Tillman, and I guess now Q Robinson if Nick Bonitto does need to play off. But listen, over this past year, Nick Bonitto showed what he was truly capable of, and I was really, really pleasantly surprised with what he did because I never, ever saw this coming. I always thought of him as all right, he's a Robin, but we need a Batman in that room. But Bonitto became a Batman. And, thinking about Bonitto, he cemented himself as a household name. The dude absolutely bleeds orange and blue. And he made 2 incredibly clutch pick sixes in December that, made him one of the core dudes on this team. And obviously, he had a great run throughout the regular season. Every week, it seemed like he had a sack, and the commentator would come across the TV and be like, well, that was the 7th sack for Nick Bonitto, the longest streak since the Broncos had Von Miller. So, yeah, I don't think Nick Bonitto is your ideal edge setter because that was a huge problem against Buffalo and Baltimore, and we did get run over in those games. And there were a million things wrong with the run defense that game, but that was a big part of it. Ideally, is he your edge setter against physical offensive lines? I mean, not really, but once again, Nick Bonitto had a phenomenal 2024 that I think surpassed even the most optimistic Broncos fans' expectations. So, once again, just because of the fact that he plays probably the second most valuable position in football besides quarterback, just because it is so hard to find that caliber of talent and get this caliber of play from one of your dudes, I think you got to extend him. And, a lot of people are drawing comparisons to Vic Beasley. Do you want to see what he is without making him play a second year? And I'm just I get it, but listen, Nick Bonitto, I'm more than confident that he will keep up his sustained success throughout 2025 and beyond. It's always a risk, but the opportunity cost of waiting now versus potentially waiting until the middle of next season, it is not something to be taken lightly. So I get why people don't want to, but for me, if I'm George Payton, I hand Nick Bonitto a blank check, and I'm all right, anywhere up to probably, I don't know, 25, 26 million, because Nick Bonitto is reportedly wanting a deal within the $20 million range, and that is more than reasonable for a second tier edge. Are you kidding me? I would sign him to that deal right now if that's reportedly all he's asking for. I think Broncos fans are going to be, I think a lot of people's eyebrows are going to raise at what he actually gets, but it's the modern NFL. The cap goes up every year, and yeah, that's just how I feel about Nick Bonitto. This is another guy, another core guy who I expect to stay with the Denver Broncos. So Zack Allen, once again, crazy good year. I did not expect him to be as dominant as he was, much like Nick Bonitto. Zack Allen, to me, in 2023, he felt like a guy where I was just all right, the contract we signed him to, is he really worth it? I was kind of on the fence about it. But after this past year, wow, what a steal. $15 million a year for Zack Allen was absolutely incredible. especially because he did not come off the field. He played the second most defensive snaps of any defensive player in football, only behind Jalen Carter. And Jalen Carter had 3 more games to do it than Zack Allen because he had the divisional game, he had the conference championship, and the Super Bowl. Oh, yeah, and by the way, they only both missed 1 game. So Zack Allen never came off the field. And that was absolutely phenomenal that he showed, the endurance to stay on the field, especially because he was labeled as like an injury-prone player from his time through Arizona. But I think anything he's done throughout the past 2 years has kind of erased that narrative about him as well. But yeah, so Zack Allen, throughout this season, it felt like every week he was atop the list of the most interior defensive line pressures, and I'm amazed. I'm amazed he only missed 1 game. But once again, I don't think he was as dominant once he came back from his injury against the Raiders. Besides the Bengals game, he was an absolute monster in that performance. But I don't know. I didn't look at any of the stats, but I felt like once he came back, he wasn't as dominant. Um, that being said, I have no qualms about signing him to a long-term contract extension either. Only besides the price. Like, the price could be pretty gargantuan. It's reported that he wants around 25 a year, and I think that's once again pretty reasonable. Obviously, there's negotiations and stuff. He could take a hometown discount, but we'll see. We'll see how much he truly likes being in the orange and blue. But I think Zack Allen, it wouldn't surprise me if he got more than Bonitto, to be completely honest, because, a lot of the teams are erring towards the side of, all right, we want interior pressure now. Interior pressure is what really, really makes us go. And I think for the Broncos scheme specifically, I think interior pressure is much more impactful than edge play because this is an edge-friendly ecosystem. Let's not forget that when you have a team that blitzes quite a bit. And I do kind of want to get away from that. I do want us to get home with 4-man pressures more. But once again, Zack Allen, I'm not going to say he was the heart and soul of the defense, but, just the play he gave us last year was absolutely incredible. And, Surtain, Allen, Bonitto, those are like top 3 guys on the defensive side of the ball. Could easily see Greenlaw, Hufanga jumping up into that category as well. But yeah, with a loaded defense, I think Zack Allen is a guy who kind of makes the whole thing work, to be completely honest. Like, we were not this good defensively until Zack Allen took a step up. We were not this good defensively until Nick Bonitto took a step up. And we've had Patrick Surtain on our team for the past 4 years, but what made us so good defensively this past year as opposed to those previous years is the play in the trenches was a huge difference maker. And yeah, literally no concerns, no qualms about signing him long-term besides the price. Like, I don't have any concerns about whether his game will age well because he's on the defensive line and that's a position that ages pretty well. I don't have any concerns about the injuries because he's kind of shed that label, especially with how durable he's been throughout his first 2 years with us. But yeah, so I have no concerns about signing him besides the price. It might be a little too expensive. That is a possibility, but we'll see. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it in his negotiation. Courtland Sutton. So I just want to begin this by saying I don't even want to know what our offenses would have looked like without him the past 2 seasons. And a lot of people last year were saying, all right, we should have traded Courtland Sutton for a 3rd-round pick because it was reported that we had that 3-team deal with the Steelers and the 49ers where we were going to send Sutton to the 49ers for 3rd from Pittsburgh. And then the Broncos were the ones that nixed that deal. But that's all I have to say is that I don't agree with trading Courtland Sutton, at least not yet, because Courtland Sutton means more to this team and your chemistry and your building around a young quarterback and your ecosystem around a young quarterback than probably any 3rd-round pick could be. And yeah, that 3rd-round pick could be a more valuable asset than Courtland Sutton when it's all said and done. But I just don't agree with the process of getting off him for a mid-round pick. Listen, Sutton's a good player. That being said, I think he's way too inconsistent down to down than you'd like from your wide receiver 1. He's kind of had an interesting arc here because, he was behind Demaryius Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders in his first year. And then in his second year, he really, really took a big leap. And that was with Case Keenum, Drew Lock, and Brandon Allen throwing him the football. Oh, yeah. All right, no. 2019? No. That was Joe Flacco. But yeah, so even worse, even more of a downgrade than Case Keenum. But he played so well. In 2019, he was a good yak threat. Like, I don't know. It's kind of interesting to see how his game has changed from then until now. 2020, he got hurt early on. He got that ACL tear. 2021, not the same anemic passing game. 2022, bad, bad, bad offense all around. And it looked like Judy was the one who was going to be our wide receiver going forward. 2023 was when he really found his chemistry with Russell Wilson. It was kind of like Russ to Lockett all over again. Made some crazy, crazy catches. And listen, he has good chemistry with Nix, and he also never complains about the state of the team. Like, there have been weeks where he'll get like 1 or 2 targets throughout the past few years, and he will never, ever say anything. He'll never go on Twitter. He'll never go to the press or, air his grievances publicly. So, just having a guy like that, it's easy to see why he's the captain. But that all being said, it's going to hurt. But moving on from him is probably the smartest thing the team can do, okay? His production is not irreplaceable. I think he just barely eclipsed the 1,000-yard mark in the final game of the year when Kansas City was literally trying to lose. So, I'm not going to say his production was like all manufactured this past year. Like I said, I don't even want to know what our offenses would have looked like without him the past 2 years. But I do think it's smartest for the team to move on from him. He makes some crazy catches, but he's the guy who will drop like a 7-yard slant route. He's the guy who will make an insane toe drag catch on the sideline. And then the next play, you'll be surprised at how he made a routine play look very, very difficult. He makes the easy stuff look hard and the hard stuff look easy. But just basically overall philosophy-wise, I think he already has an injury history. And he's an older wide receiver who's not a high-end separator, so separation has never been his game. So his game, I don't expect it to age very well. And once again, like, if we sign him for another year or two, whatever, completely fine with that. But, once again, it's all about the price point. Like, look at what Michael Pittman got. Look at what, guys like, I don't know, who's a good comparison to him? Brandon Ayuk, probably somewhere in that range, even though Ayuk is better than Sutton. But you have to imagine that Sutton would want at least a step down from that minimum. And we paid him, I think, $22 million this past year or something like that. Or I think we're on the hook for $22 million this upcoming year. I'm not entirely sure. But either way, I just think that he's the most easily replaceable of these three. Really hard to get interior defensive line production that we got from this past year with a guy like Zack Allen. Really hard to get a second team all-pro edge, even more so than it is to find guys at the wide receiver position who can contribute. Once again, Sutton was very important to our offense these past 2 years, but I still feel like we have more guys behind him who can step up. I feel like we're more equipped now if you were to miss a game or two than we were 2 years ago. And, if Sutton is not a part of the team's long-term plans, then they're probably just better off letting him walk next year. And that's personally what I would do. It's not an endorsement on Pat Bryant. It's not an endorsement on Vlay specifically. It's just like, I think we can do better. I just think letting him walk would be the smartest thing for this team. It's not what I want to happen, but, it's the nature of the business. You just got to resource allocate to make the most out of Bo Nix's window. And yeah, so next season, I think we can do better and maximize our resources with Sutton off this team better than we could with him on it. That's all it comes down to. I love him. He's a captain. He's, he bleeds orange and blue. But once again, long term, I think huge mile high salute to Courtland Sutton. But I think he's, of these three, the one that I don't think should get extended. Yes, on Zack Allen. Nah, not really feeling it on Courtland Sutton. So that basically does it for me. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below, and I will see you guys next time. Peace.